Welcome to version 2.0 of the ultimate travel and landscape photography tutorial. In this video, we are going from Iceland to Japan to Portugal to New York. And this is the crazy part, you also get access to all of these raw files. What other free tutorial is doing this? We start out with the gear, then get into on-location photography, and then move into editing. I want to say thank you so much to Tamron for sponsoring this tutorial. Without their support, this would not have happened. Let's get started with the gear I'm going to be using throughout this tutorial. So I'm going to only be using Tamron lenses, but on a variety of different Sony bodies. So right now I'm recording the video on the Sony ZV-E1, but a lot of the photos you're going to see are from the Sony A7CR or the Sony A7 IV, or even a few with the A7R Mark V. Your camera body choice comes down to your specific needs. For me, I wear a lot of different hats. So I wear the YouTube hat here. I do the travel and landscape photography thing primarily here on YouTube and a little bit on Instagram as well. But my main job is that of a wedding photographer and portrait photographer and commercial video creator, and also sometimes photographer there too. So while there will be a lot of gear featured throughout this video, you don't have to have all of that. Just one nice small camera body, one newer mirrorless camera body will do you pretty well. And while it is important to get something that's it's a pretty good camera body, even DSLRs back to the 2015, 2016, 2017 are still great at creating images. The newer advancements you get from buying a newer mirrorless camera is primarily, I would say, autofocus as well as video features. So if those are not important to you, you probably don't have to get the latest and greatest. What is important, or what is even more important than camera bodies, lenses here. If you're reading any older articles, there might be some criticisms of third-party glass and it just not being as good, or even if you're reading ancient articles, people will say that zoom lenses are just not as good as prime lenses, and I do not find that to be true anymore. When it comes to travel and landscape and city photography, I prefer having a zoom lens to give you that variety over having just a prime. And while we're going to use all these lenses throughout this video, I'll give them all an introduction when we're actually in the field. My favorite lenses, so I have two. So depending on what I'm doing, the 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8 is my favorite wedding lens of all time. So for wedding ceremonies and just the entire day, this lens will have you covered. For landscape and city photography and what we're going to be doing within this video, I am going to do some samples with this in Iceland specifically, but overall I would consider this to be a main workhorse lens for my wedding and portrait photography business, and not so much a travel lens, even though it does so much. 35 to 150 on full frame, really nice. Moving into one of my other favorite lenses, this is specifically if you're interested in doing some low light photography. This is the 28 to 75 f2.8, it's the G2 version. It is incredible. The images coming off this lens, really, really nice. It's f2.8 aperture, which means if you do find yourself in darker environments, you're going to have no problems at all. As well as this could be used as a main lens on a wedding day too, or a portrait session, whatever you need. This lens is incredibly versatile. Now Tamron has an even more versatile option that we're going to look at in Japan, and this is the 28 to 300. It is an f4 to f7.1, and what 28 to 300 means is that it zooms pretty much, it kind of includes, it goes beyond the lenses here. It actually zooms to 300, whereas this one ends up at 150. It does let more light in, which is why the barrel size is bigger. But overall, side by side, even with this 28 to 75 f2.8, it's not that much bigger and you're getting a lot more. So depending on the situations that you are going to find yourself in during your photography experience, if you don't need that 2.8 aperture for that low light performance, or maybe just that really shallow depth of field for portrait sessions, I would consider looking at this lens here as a daily walk around lens. The variation that you get off of here is incredible. The higher ISO capabilities of mirrorless cameras are also incredible these days. So even though at the 300 end, it is an f7.1 that doesn't allow a whole lot of light in, if you're outside in the daytime, that is totally fine. And even at nighttime, I've found that as long as you're very conscious of your shutter speed, so you don't have to shoot high frame rate. I guess if you're shooting in stadium sports and need a fast shutter speed, this might not be the lens for you. There are better options for that. But for me, doing city photography and doing some landscape photography where I'm pretty in control of my shutter speeds, I really am able to get to a shutter speed that I can keep my ISO nice and low. It also has stabilization in this lens as well, so your footage is nice and stable. Like the video footage that comes off of this kit here is absolutely wonderful. Now, all these lenses, while they do start, these ones start at 28 millimeters. This one here starts at 35 millimeters. It's not quite wide enough to do absolutely everything that I would ever need. So there are two Tamron lenses at the end here. We actually recorded most of the Japan content, the video on this 17 to 28 millimeter lens. So it's, these are all full frame lenses, and the 17 to 28 is also internally, it zooms internally. So it doesn't extend as you zoom. The front element does move, but you don't get that extended casing like you'd get on a lens like this. Marshall used this for pretty much the entire Japan trip for doing video, as well as we use this in Iceland, and I was very, very happy with the results. Now, a lens that I find just a little bit more versatile for me, again, this kind of comes down to some wedding and portrait photography as well. This lens here is the 20 to 40 f2.8, so it does extend a tiny little bit, but I find the 20 to 40 millimeter focal range really useful, especially when paired with something like this 35 to 150. As you can see, you get all the way from 20 to 150 within these two lenses at 2.8 or even at f2 if you're at 35 on this here. So it really does unlock a huge focal range. The 20 to 40 is a nice, lightweight, kind of all day lens. I find that the 20 millimeter wide end I am totally happy with. Well, you might want to go something wider like the 17 to 28. I find that a 20 to 40 fits my needs a little bit better, and especially as an all-day walk-around lens. Another interesting thing, so I'm going to remove the big 38 to 150 for the time being. The front thread size, so to put the screw-on filters on, all of these are the exact same, so 67 millimeters. So if you're buying those VNDs, you're buying CPL, we're gonna talk all about them and how to use them in this video. If you are buying filters, they just work on all your lenses. Another lens that I find to be really useful and also just incredibly cost effective is this 35 millimeter f2.8. It is super lightweight, and again, very, very inexpensive for a prime lens. For an all-day walk-around lens, I'm kind of happy with a 35. There are also a few different millimeter versions of these prime lenses, so if you are interested in getting something that is very lightweight, and again, I will stress the cost effectiveness of it, these are a great buy as well. Now let's go out in the world and use these lenses.
Their head, like looks like an actual skull. That's from like the ones from Zelda.
The Tamron 28 to 300 is the perfect lens for when you stay at a hotel surrounded by capybaras. Have a good day. Silent autofocus. The camera though, it does identify nostrils as eyes because it's probably not trained to capture a capybara. It does a good job 95% of the time, but every now and then, it's gonna hit a nostril for you. Photos, videos. This is the lens. This is the walk-around lens for capybaras. Here we are in Iceland. I thought that I would take a moment to tell you about the gear we're going to be using. I'm pretty minimal when it comes to gear for landscape photography. I only have two lenses with me on this exact trip. One is a 17 to 28 Tamron, and the other is a 35 to 150 Tamron. Before you go and try to buy one of these, there is a new lens coming out, or it's out now if you're watching this video, that I didn't have access to, the 20 to 40 f2.8 Tamron, which I would recommend above this lens. Camera body, Sony a7 IV, and then I have a tripod. You don't have to get too fancy with your tripod, you don't gotta spend too much money. It's just a thing that holds your camera up. And then I have NDs, actually variable NDs, which means that they block a variable amount of light depending on which direction you turn them. For both my landscape photography as well as a lot of the gear that we use, we also do video with. So variable NDs, very, very helpful for video, and we have them. So we use them for landscape photography as well. If you are looking at them and they're a little bit too expensive, you can likely get a 10-stop ND, or you can even get the plate filters if you really want to go all in. I would say, at least for myself, I like to keep my kit minimal, and all of this fits easily inside a backpack with no problem. And then I also have a bonus camera as well, film camera. This one here is a Nikon FM3A. You put film in it, and it has an incredible 50 millimeter lens, and I recommend at least having something to capture a little bit of film. I don't know if that's for you. That doesn't have to be for you. Let's go take some pictures. Here we are, ready for our morning of landscape photography. Let's get started then, shall we? With me for gear this morning, I have the Sony a7 IV and the Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8. Hi, Marshall. We're now using the pay station as a main light, and it is blue hour right now, and I don't think we're gonna get much of a sunrise, so we're not gonna get much light. What we will get is a clear view of the mountain, and when you're only in a location for a certain period of time, kind of got to do with the best with whatever you can. And mountaintop is not obstructed by fog, which is great. And the waterfall, it's going to be windy down there, maybe a little bit wet, but we're going to do some great photography. I have an ND on here, but I don't need it because you can use the world to ND right now because it's nice and dark. I will start with a longer exposure of the waterfall. And for waterfall photography, there's no exact right that it has to be 4 seconds in order to be a beautiful image. It's kind of whatever you're feeling. Play around, have some fun, whatever you think you like, that's the winner. It's still nighttime, so we've brought the Lume Cube Go to light us. Thanks, Lume Cube, for sending us a bunch of things and helping us flashlight in a softer way. And I'm gonna set my tripod up at regular human height. You could go for an extreme angle, but it's early and it's not that comfortable. A lot of my photography is based around how comfortable I am. And when you're at full extension, I don't know, you just stand there, you take the pictures. The other thing you don't want to do, or you'll get made fun of on the internet, is never do a full center column extend. It's not very, especially if you're doing a longer exposure, it is not very stable. So I'm gonna start with a 5-second exposure, and I'm actually gonna set a self timer in here. You can use a trigger, you can use a wireless trigger, a wired trigger. So 2-second self timer, which means I hit the button, I hit the physical thing, camera has 2 seconds to kind of chill out. And let's see that first photo. Photographers are the only ones dumb enough to be out here this early in the morning. It's only like 6 of us today. Usually there's, if it was gonna be a good sunrise, there'd be 150 photographers all lined up here. Or Northern Lights, 1,000 photographers. Another tip, manual focus this time of day. It's too dark for autofocus, or it works, but it's better and better practice to do manual focus. And usually what I do is I'll use my autofocus, I'll focus on infinity, I'll find a light out in the distance and I'll make sure my camera focuses on it, and then I'll flip it into manual focus. And sometimes I have to switch on the lens, sometimes you have to go into the menu to do it. But I would say that's another very important thing to do, as well as if you're in body stabilization, maybe is adding a little bit, trying to do something while you're doing a long exposure. Best practice to turn that off as well when you're doing longer exposures on a tripod. Most cameras these days, they'll know, but it's smart. And that's what landscape photography is about, smartness. And getting gas station hot dogs. It's probably the best part of landscape photography here in Iceland, is the gas station hot dog element, which is always strong with us. If you're gonna see 25 waterfalls, you better get 25 hot dogs. Blue hour is almost complete. There will be no sunrise. There will be really no golden hour. I guess the light will be goldenish. When does golden hour start? Let's talk about an app. This app, it's called Alpenglow, and it tells us right now that the sunrise prediction is poor, but blue hour goes until 7:10. So right now we're technically in golden hour, but it still feels pretty blue. Anyways, Alpenglow, great app for just giving you the basic blue hour, golden hour, sunrise, sunset, last light, the basics that you need for landscape photography. There are apps that go a lot more in-depth into different details, but I find that that's pretty good for most of what I need. Another app that we relied on this morning is called AccuWeather, and it gives you a minute-by-minute kind of forecast that is 80% accurate. And if it says it's gonna rain for 19 minutes, it's probably gonna rain for somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes. The thing you'll notice at locations like this is that photographers all seem to stack in one spot. So take a walk, even if everyone's got their tripod set up, they look like they officially know what they're doing, they got the gear. Take a little walk and see if there's a composition that you like a little bit better, rather than just kind of stacking in there and trying to get the same frame. Also, this white balance is really blue, isn't it? We've located what appears to be a pretty nice boat just a little bit outside of Lofsvik here in Iceland. We don't know if it's a photo yet, and I'm thinking about what the best photo could be for this boat. It's kind of in the water. I'm thinking super wide. I think we get nice and close. I might do a long exposure with an ND filter to get a little bit of cloud movement, although the clouds don't appear to be moving. And I think that this image is going to be black and white regardless of how I shoot it. So you can either shoot it in camera black and white, so you know exactly what you're getting. It's a little bit more true and pure, or you can just convert it in post. It's up to you. Here we go. You thought that it was B-roll, but now it's A-roll. Using the Peak Design tripod. It's a nice tripod. Any tripod that's sturdy will do. And the Sony Alpha 7 IV Tamron 17-28 super wide, or middle wide, maybe not super wide. It's quite windy. This is maybe the most obvious spot you go, and it will probably end up being the nicest spot. You have foreground element, which is the beach and the water, subject, and background. If you wanted to get a little bit lower, you could move that horizon line kind of going through the boat. Get lower, you probably couldn't get higher to get it out of the frame, but you can definitely go low. So maybe we'll do that next. We'll get real low and get that black and white boat on beach shot. Goodbye, boat. See you next time. Here we go. Commencing B-roll sequence. This is great. Really fantastic B-roll. Hello? I didn't see you there. There are a few different things you could do with this scene. You could go kind of more up to eye level and kind of capture something more true to what you're seeing. Or you can get really low. If you are really low, be cautious of waves. You get some pretty wild rogue waves in here. I'm gonna start here at 35, 10 seconds, f7.1, and we're gonna see how that looks first and then make decisions from there. I'm guessing I'm gonna go into about 50 for the next photo, get a little bit closer, and I also suspect that this scene, it's already very monochromatic, so I do suspect that this is gonna end up being a black and white photo as well. We are absolutely in the splash zone here. You'd pay extra money for these tickets at Cirque du Soleil. We're now framing out the key element of the beach, the Sphinx. It's gone. And I felt it was attracting too much attention. I wanted it to be more simple. Don't look at a thing, just do less. Pop up. It's gonna end up being the nicest photo. We actually have some sky, some blue, some interest, rather than just nothing like we've had all day. Yes, I think that looks quite nice. This image will for sure make you $100,000. At minimum. Made some friends, took some pictures. What a great day. Let's go to B-roll land. B-roll land is lovely. I love it here in B-roll land. It's great. Now I'm the puddlegram. Back to B-roll. You know what they say, leave only trash, not footprints. So make sure you leave trash to leave in nature, but take your footprints with you. We're at the Blue Lagoon Hotel, and there's a little mound, a little tuft of this in the center of the water. It's a very nice contrast between the blue water and the green. There's a little pathway though. It's not true landscape photography, but I think it'll make a nice photo. I've preset everything, so fortunately with mirrorless, you just, whatever you make your settings, you got live view of it. So I'm doing a 10-second exposure, f14, and I have my 2 to 5 stop ND set to 5 stops. So we're gonna go out, we're gonna put it down, hit the button, and then go. And also we're doing this over breakfast, so no hotel guests are in it. Also the breakfast here is amazing. Oh yeah, that's some good B-roll. Here we are at the Blue Lagoon, or in Icelandic, as they say, the Lagoon. No one's out here, which is nice. I think my spot is right here. Tripod's gonna go down, super wide or mid-wide angle lens, 17. That looks darn nice. We're gonna set that 2-second timer and maybe hop out of manual focus. Here we go. Hopefully this doesn't fall over like earlier. It's not windy. I blame the wind. What we're trying to do with the long exposure here is basically smooth out all the water. As you can see, there's a current, or maybe it's the way it circulates here, but it makes it for not the prettiest photo. If you were to say do something like a 30-second exposure, maybe at f22, all of a sudden the ripples just become a nice soft surface. All the ripples disappear. We've discovered a nice little scene off behind us, the lighthouse, and a little small house. So the house is kind of that corner framing element, rule of third style. The downside is that I have a 150, which is usually fine for most general things. But today I kind of feel like I need a little bit more. I feel like I need a 300 to get this shot. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the photo at 150. We're gonna punch into APS-C mode within our camera to frame it how I want. I use this a lot at wedding days, portrait shoots, when I want to get a little bit closer, especially for photojournalism. And I'm able to, I don't know, basically get what I want in camera rather than cropping it in post-production. Very easily crop it. If you have the time, maybe by all means. As an efficiency thing, when it comes to weddings, I've just gotten in the habit of shooting it how I want it in camera. So no ND filter for this, just take the picture. It's so windy. Discovered something wonderful and beautiful. We are rushing to make sure the sun does not go away. Here we go. Oh yeah, that looks nice. All right, so we have here a great leading line through the mountains, some good light on the mountains out there. Even though it's middle of the day, it's directional enough. If it was straight down, it might not be the best light, but this time of year, the sun is always at a little bit of an angle. So you got some shadows in there. The road nicely going up with some rain on it, which also means that it's gonna be a little bit more contrasty. So get out and shoot after it rains because the top ND filter. This is a mist filter as well, which adds a layer of mist. It's also been dropped on its face, which adds an additional small layer of mist. Those kind of go with what we're trying to do today. Make a misty haunted scene. Got my VND set to 9 stops, and we're gonna go down to, what are you feeling? 4 seconds? 4 seconds at f5.6. We gotta do more. Should we do 30 seconds? Let's do 30 seconds. Let's get crazy. You having a nice time, Marshall? Marshall's having a nice time. All right, 30 seconds almost up. Oh, it looks good. Now that we got the shot that we came here for, it's important to go for a little bit of a walk around, see some other details, get those supporting images. One could be the basalt columns right here, or there's a pretty cool rock formation around the corner. So I think we're gonna go do that, get a few photos of that, and then be on our way. Very calm today though. The water, not so much. Don't come here to swim. That would be a bad idea. Now a situation where you would not want a longer shutter speed is if you wanna capture the craziness of these waves. So I'm gonna shoot a few frames at 150 millimeters and get the just the explosion of this crazy wave. Oh yeah. That's nice. Photos of waves. See you next scene. Is this B-roll? Or is this A-roll? What we have here is a reflection. Reflections are great for photography. They balance the scene. They kind of frame the scene a lot of the time. They're just very interesting. We're gonna set up here, and I think that a 35 is gonna be the correct tool. We're gonna find out together. So the bad news is, there's people in the scene. The good news maybe is that there's people in the scene. It's a very interesting scene out there. This is nice. Very clean reflections, no movement in the water. And I do my best to kind of isolate elements and find the elements that have less fog on them, because the mountains out there look very, very nice, but they're very foggy. And they just kind of look like little outlines, which might look cool. Maybe black and white, we'll see. But the black sand beach into this, I wish there was one more element somewhere in here to use, but that's okay. Looks very nice. Very calm times out here this morning. 1.5 kilometers. Might set up a tripod for one or two longer exposures here. The photograph without longer exposure does look nice. I'm gonna frame up these three rocks out here. These three elements together. They're always nice. A little misty. Let's do a 10-second exposure. I'm gonna set my timer. Let's see what that looks like. It'll give us a good starting point. This rock that's nice and close also might be a nice little vertical image. It's gonna be a little too misty today for this. Here we go. Some more reflections. Looks nice. Let's continue on. So say you've just arrived at a waterfall, and a busload of, actually several busloads of tourists have also arrived here. And you want a photo of the waterfall with no tourists, I'm gonna show you a trick. Let's go. This is the one trick that waterfall photographers don't want you to know, is that you can just hide everyone that's at the waterfall in the grass if you get low enough over here. And then you don't need any fancy tricks to make people disappear. You don't gotta wake up early. You're just hiding everyone in the grass. Let's see. Beautiful. There it is. Landscape photography in Iceland. Many hot dogs consumed. Hope you enjoyed. Comment below if you have any questions. And now, our last Icelandic hot dog. It's a very orange bus. This was the least scenic of all the locations. Good morning from the fall. We're out here photographing some fall trees. I've been scouting this opportunity for a couple of days now. Pre-sunrise, before the sun actually hits the leaves, is, in my opinion, the ideal time. I've seen the sunrise here and the light comes up, gets blocked by a building, and it makes it a little inconsistent. So I'm going to do some long exposures before the sun actually comes up, and I'm going to see if I like those better than when the sunrise actually appears and there is light on the trees. The light is naturally going to bring out a lot more saturation in the scene, but I think in terms of creating something that is a little more painterly, I think this is the right time. You'll also notice there are a number of geese, or maybe you can hear them. There are a number of geese in the water, disturbing the water. I want to make as clear of reflection as I possibly can, and you can see there's ripples in the water right now. So I put a 5-stop ND filter on the front of this lens, and I am in aperture priority mode, set my ISO to 100, and then I'm selecting my shutter speed, and I'm letting the camera decide which aperture to use. So it's going to do something like f9 or maybe f13 right now, which is fine. If it gets to f16, I might either go for a stronger ND, maybe a 10-stop ND, or I'll take a few images at f16. This lens does not go higher than f16 in terms of numbers. Aperture is confusing because maximum aperture is technically the widest, so it would be f2 on this lens, but the minimum aperture does max out at f16. These geese are getting loud. They want me to take some pictures, so let's take some pictures. Came here for landscape and travel photography, but you might get a goose fight. So I've set a 2-second timer in my camera, and I'm hoping that no one walks on the bridge because the bridge is for sure gonna move a little bit. So I am trying to stay perfectly still and wait for my 25 seconds, which I believe is going to smooth out all the wrinkles in the water there. So 20-second exposure actually isn't making this as calm of scene as I want it to be. So I'm going to merge 3 of these exposures in post, which means I'm going to make essentially a 60-second exposure, but between 3 images rather than just doing it in one shot. It's very calm today, which is nice, so the leaves aren't moving. So we shouldn't have any problems with that, but that is something to keep in mind, that if you're photographing something that is moving, you might have to blend 2 exposures. So you do one for the water, and then you make a transition point, and then you bring the other half of the scene with the moving objects in at something like, I don't know, F. Keep it down, guys. And then you bring the other half of the scene in at a shutter speed that's more reasonable for whatever you're photographing. Today, leaves not moving. Life is good. Life is easy. Photographing into this time of golden hour, you also get this really nice pinky glow to the scene as well, which I'm pretty excited about. I think that this is the correct time, and I'm probably gonna pack it up and head somewhere else after I get this shot for actual proper golden hour. Well, I know that this is the frame that I want. There's probably something else cool going on that I just haven't found yet. So after this, we're going for a walk. In terms of the composition here, you have a few options. So on the Tamron 35 to 150, you obviously have a lot of versatility, a lot of zoom. I'm going to do a few at 35 that include everything. I'm doing my best to make it look not exactly like a perfect mirror, but a little bit more mirrored, which means the horizon is going to be center composed, which is something that I usually don't do. I'm also playing with 2 options that I'm going to figure out which one I like better in post. I'm including this building that says Park Inn over here in some of the shots, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit and just get the trees and clean the composition up a little bit. I think it's nice, at least for photographing in your own city. We're in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada today. It's nice to have elements that show you that you are in fact in Waterloo Park. And if you're going to be creating images or putting them in a gallery that's local, that local people are going to come to, I think it makes it a much more compelling image to them to potentially buy if it is something that they locally recognize and it's just not some random trees with a little marker underneath that says, hey, this is in Waterloo Park, cool, buy it. If they see something that maybe they spent their childhood getting snacks at this building, it's going to become an image that they are very likely to purchase very quickly. There are also a few objects that I know I'm going to have to remove in the trees. I actually came here on a Saturday because I knew that there's construction going on, and I photographed this a couple of days this week, and there are just white trucks all buried in there. So I don't mind removing a few elements, knowing that I'm keeping the overall scene what it was, but I don't want to go and have to do 15 or 20 different object removals in this scene. It makes it feel less authentic to what it is. And if you are doing the object removes, I recommend turning the generative AI off. So at least it's using elements from within the scene to build the patches that you're putting in there, rather than going out to the internet and finding someone else's work and kind of integrating it into your own in a way. And there's a checkbox to turn that off and on. And the plus is it works a lot faster if it doesn't have to go to the internet to collect that other photographer's stuff and put it in your image. And I know it doesn't just steal exactly from one person. It takes an average of a bunch of different photos that look the same and create some elements for you. But I think it's better if you have that checkbox off and you're just using elements that you have taken in this specific image. I didn't even think to figure out when the moon was rising and if it was going to be in a spot. I think it came up from over this side. It's a nice shot with the gooses. The goose? Ducks? Birds, man. I almost fell into one of the common traps of landscape photography, trying to include way too many elements. I know that I can hear a train is coming. There's gonna be a train crossing this bridge, and I wanted to get that with the moon and the trees. That's too much. Focus, simplify the image. And well, in my mind, that was a super cool image. It definitely was trying to do too much. So simplify your scenes when you possibly can. Don't try to do too much. Just a couple of elements is going to make a more powerful image than trying to include 55 different elements. I know this is challenging when it comes to city photography and you're photographing cityscapes. The rules do change, or they change a little bit, and it also changes to your taste. It changes a little bit for city photography. If you are doing a city skyline, there's obviously going to be more elements, but I feel like all those elements kind of blend into one. It's maybe when you're trying to also include a foreground that's not necessary to that image. In my opinion, again, this is all my opinion, that if this is not your taste, you can do whatever you want. I'm giving you the tools to go out there and create the work that you want to exist in the world. But for me personally, I like to simplify my images as much as I possibly can. And this morning I am on the A7 IV, which is usually one of my wedding photography cameras, and the Tamron 35-150, and the Peak Design travel tripod, the carbon fiber edition. I like it, but it's very expensive. I'm going to put a recommended list of all of my gear in the description, so if you are interested in seeing all the tools that I used and which ones I actually recommend from this video, there will be links down below. This concludes the morning fall landscape photography at the end of this video, and then in the Lightroom section of this video, we will be editing this image, and you can have access to these files as well. And in terms of images, it's nice to create that one key image that you've come here for, but it's also nice to get some supporting images. I think that this is additionally helpful if you do plan on selling your work, that you can sell that one main image, but then a few other smaller pieces to fit the space that they're decorating with that larger image. So let's head over to the trees and get a few images of the same scene, but just in a slightly different context. The Tamron 35-150 really is a nice addition to your kit, especially when you don't mind the extra weight, because it really will help you get a lot of images that you might not be able to get otherwise. It's a nice scene happening over here right now. It's possible we were a little bit too slow in our walk over to get something that fits the exact same vibe as over there, but I am going to get a shot of the sun rising up through here. I'm drawn to it. I don't know if it's going to be an incredible image that I'm going to use, but it seems nice right now, so I'll take it now and then I'll figure that out in post. I'm just handheld right now, no ND, and I've stopped down to f4 just to give myself a little bit more depth of field, but this lens wide open is really, really nice. When I'm looking for compositions in leaves like this, I'm looking for layers, so I want different colors of trees layered on top of each other. I feel like that makes a better image, at least again, to me. So I'm going to go for a photo of the red tree with the green tree and the blue sky. I think that's going to come together nice. I'm going to need a few others that are more close-ups of just leaves. And then for real, we're going to head somewhere else. So you'll see in editing that I have my camera set to shade white balance, which is becoming quite golden at this time. It's actually a very golden image. It's kind of becoming monochromatic in the sense that it's just yellows and golds and I guess whites and darks. And it's just a really, really nice scene, and one that if I would have stayed over there and continued to try to get the shot that I thought that I was here for, I would have missed that. And I feel like that's a really good local photo that people are going to really enjoy. There's a sunrise over the building right now. Over here we have a shot that I would consider to be a trap. Look at all the amazing elements going on, but they're never going to come together nicely for you. You have a beautiful fall tree, Waterloo's oldest schoolhouse. You have the moon rising in a perfectly blue sky behind autumn trees, and you have some plaques and you have some planters. I'm going to take the image because I think it's quite nice, but it's definitely not an image that's going to simplify well enough, I don't think. And also my shadow's in it too. And maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am wrong. I hope that this image cleans up nice. You kind of take the best guess you can when you're out in the field, and then you figure out what you like the best in post-production. At least that's what I think. I don't know if that's right or wrong. So I was able to get something that I liked, and also I got my shadow mostly out of the scene. If you ever are struggling with a composition and you're like, I like it, but I need to move things a little bit, you can usually just take a few steps back and zoom in. I also like this for bringing further away elements into the scene. So for instance, the moon, if you shoot at 20 millimeters and you're up close to that building, the moon is going to be 2 pixels in the scene. But if you take a few steps back and you zoom into maybe 50, or if you can get a composition at 200, that moon is going to look a heck of a lot bigger in that scene. I do this for buildings as well in cities, that if I am trying to get a couple to look like they're in a very large place, a very large city, or surrounded by buildings, I do my best to stay at a longer focal length, even though it's a little bit challenging in those environments. But it really does make the city seem a lot larger, or how it actually feels in real life, rather than just flat because you photographed it at 16 millimeters. Another thing I am very aware of is trying my best to keep my camera level. So I never, with the exception maybe of some trees today, I never really point my camera directly up or directly down. I'm always trying to keep it eye level to what you would experience as a human being. And maybe that sounds boring to you and you want to get low levels and you want to get those wide shots with crazy compositions, and by all means go out and do that. I'm sharing with you in this video what I do, and I tend to gravitate a little bit more towards that style of image. So I do my best to keep my horizons pretty level when possible, and I feel like for me, at least, that gives me more final images in the gallery. Here we are in a tree. Pretty nice out here. Fall Colors, Ontario. Here we have another example of some good layers. There might be too much going on, but I think that I like it. We got some ducks, we got some buildings, we have some buildings that are in more crisp focus and some that are a little bit more misty and hazy in the distance. We have some foreground, we have a distinct middle ground, and we have some background. So I think the image overall is gonna look pretty good. I also have a car in the park. Security is trying to shut down my landscape photography tutorial. I won't let them. And now we are returning to the original spot we started the fall activities at. I'm gonna see how it's changed. I don't know if I'm gonna do a handheld photo. I don't think I'm gonna tripod something. I would definitely need a 10-stop ND to really smooth out the water at this point. So maybe I leave a little bit of texture in the water. Maybe that's nice. Maybe that's not nice. Figure that out another time. And don't sleep on the simple elements of your scene that might actually make for good photos, given the conditions you're in. So today we have some nice depth over here with the sunlight. We got these 3 really boring small trees beside a fence. Is it gonna make a good photo? Is it not gonna make a good photo? I bet it will make a good photo, maybe at 100 on the Tamron 35 to 150. Okay, didn't work out that time, but sometimes it works out. Sometimes it's a good surprise. Today, no surprise, just boring photo. We've climbed to the top of the earth, and it's important whenever you're in situations like this that the entire vista looks amazing. Again, simplifying composition, find those 2-3 elements that come together that make a nice image, rather than just trying to capture everything you're feeling and experiencing. And that is a problem I still deal with to this day, because I do want to capture everything. I've been here, this is an exciting moment, especially if you're in a location that you've never been. But again, simplify as best you can. I have a composition laid out here that involves the fall colors that we were just photographing, as well as the train tracks. So I'm gonna wait for a train to go by, because I feel like train tracks alone are kind of a little strange. So I want a train on there, and I'll probably take a few photos as the train goes by to figure out where the composition best lies when I can see it on a bigger monitor. I also find myself gravitating towards larger lenses or longer lenses when in large environments. So that means in a situation like this, where there is a lot going on, that your instant reaction might be to go as wide as possible to capture it all. I do like to get that wide shot, but then I also like to focus in on elements where the light is doing something interesting, or there's an interesting image potentially available there. So always bring a longer lens with you if you are in larger landscapes or larger environments. Street photography, walking around, maybe you're gonna want a 35-50, but when you have opportunities like this with really nice light, it is incredible to have a longer lens. Recording earlier, tons of trains. Now that I want train, no train. Oh, here comes a train. We got train. A bit of a slanty composition. Unfortunately, I am on a patio here and I don't have exact control over my location, but I think I'm happy with it. I involved the trees. I involved a little tree on the left-hand side to frame the image a little bit, as well as 2 bodies of water. I feel like humans like looking at water. They like looking at pathways, and I feel like there's a lot of things going on here. Maybe too many things going on, but I think it's a pretty good image overall. we're going to do a full wedding day behind the scenes with the Tamron 28-75mm. It's going to be on the Nikon ZF. This also comes for Sony as well. And for wedding photography, the 24-70 f2.8 is usually considered the do everything all day lens. And this lens here from Tamron comes in at a lower price point. And we're going to see how it does on a wedding day. I'm going to begin the day with it. It is a real wedding, so if I need to change lenses, I'm going to change lenses. But I do suspect this is going to do a lot of the coverage that I need today. So today we're only doing photography, but other days we will do both photography and video. So today you're going to see some both GoPro on top of my camera as well as some screen records, so you can actually see how the lens functions. Overall, I use this, this is my third time using this lens. I tested it out a little bit last week. 2 days ago, I shot the ceremony with it, and there were a few standout photos, like this kind of close-up here of the officiant. This lens just has a three-dimensional pop to it that I really love. And it also comes with a lot of versatility because you get the full zoom range from 28 to 75 and the positives and negatives of using a zoom versus using primes. So usually on the channel here and usually in my work, I am always on primes. And the aesthetic quality and the shallow depth of field that comes out of it, very pleased with primes. But you do miss out on some shots with the lack of versatility that you have to run across the scene. Now I can just zoom across the scene. So there is a balance there, and you got to figure out what the correct balance is for you. Don't just let me tell you that I use this lens, so you're going to go out and use this lens. Find the lenses that work the best for you and the style of coverage and weddings that you are doing. Tamron 28-75 f2 G2. It's not an f2, it's an f2.8. Photography only today. Yes, channel spoiler. Sometimes I do photo and video coverage, so if you're interested in doing both of those services together, there's a lot more content on the channel. Let's talk about the form factor of the lens. It's nice, right? Zooming on the front. Focus ring here. I don't really find myself in current mirrorless times overriding the autofocus selections too often. And if I do, I'm usually tapping the back of the screen to refocus on something. It's a good size. It's not intimidating. It's definitely not the size and the weight of the Tamron 35-150, which is another lens that I absolutely love for weddings and more specifically for ceremonies. And the reason I love it for ceremonies is because it does everything and it zooms all the way to 150, which is awesome, but it comes with that heaviness and it comes with the largeness and the expensive price tag as well. So a lens like this, a little less or a lot less expensive, and will get you through a lot of the day. And as always, I have a button, so I have the front function button up here set to go from full frame mode into DX crop mode. If I am using a Sony camera, I have my C2 button up here set to that, so I can easily bump in APS-C crop, get a little additional reach. So if I am on that Tamron 35-150, hit that 150, bump into APS-C crop mode, and now all of a sudden I'm kind of at an effective 225mm. Same goes for this, but I don't know the math on 75 times 1.5. And you're not like getting another lens or technically more reach from it, you're just cropping inside your camera. So if you are using a service that I recommend, like Imagine, which edits all of my photos for me automatically, they're amazing. Use a link in the description to get 1,500 free edits rather than the 1,000 free edits that they'll give you if you just sign up on their regular website. So use the link, 500 bonus edits, and I use them to process all my files, and they're not going to crop exactly like me. They can come close, there is a cropping option, but I don't usually enable that. And if I can give them the final image with the actual crop that I want from my camera, I'm just going to get to the final gallery faster, which I appreciate. And there it is all day with the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 G2. Unintentionally, I guess, that I began the day with it, and it just turned out to be the absolute best tool for the wedding today. Didn't even have to change lenses one single time, which is pretty crazy. I'm also not doing any dance floor coverage tonight because it is currently sunset, and I am on my way out after the sunset session. With the Tamron 28 to 75 f2.8, we are walking all the way from Dumbo in Brooklyn to the Seinfeld Diner at 112th and Broadway. It's hot today, and we're gonna do everything in our power to not stop at Margaritaville in Times Square. Let's go. Oh, this photo right here. So if you're back here, you get the Empire State Building through the Manhattan Bridge. I would say that's a great first shot. Today, we're using the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8, which is an incredible do everything lens. Whether you are out travel photography like this, or you're a wedding photographer or a wedding video creator, it kind of does everything you need. I would say value per dollar. This is it's batting good. Let's continue our walk. How does this lens handle flare? That's how it handles flare. You stop it down. We're gonna go an f22 to get that nice starburst sun. Nice, right? Pretty much everything you're gonna see is going to be at f2.8 today. Maybe 3.2, stop down just a tiny bit. A little more depth of field, but I don't know. I like to shoot everything kind of wide open. Tim and Tyler have joined me on this journey from Dumbo, Brooklyn, all the way to the Seinfeld restaurant. And we have a special guest who is on an airplane right now, but he will be arriving soon. Here we are on the Brooklyn Bridge. Tamron 28, 75 f2.8. We get one shot of the bridge in black and white, and that's probably all. It's already really hot. It's gonna be 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. And we thought starting at 8 a.m. we would beat that, but no, it's already hot. No sun, no breeze. Almost took the city bike up here. We decided it would be rude to immediately bail on the challenge and introduce a bike. So here we go, Brooklyn Bridge. That might be the shot. This bridge walk used to be a lot of fun because it was both the pedestrian bridge and also the bike bridge. So you'd be walking and bikes would be navigating around you. Now the bike lane's down there. Not as scenic, but I'm very happy we walked rather than taking the city bike. I'll catch this lady. The old Brooklyn Bridge. Favorite bridge in the world. I don't know if I have a favorite bridge. It could be. I think we're actually gonna get a clearing here. This is incredibly rare. There we go. I'm gonna go all the way down to f8. I'm gonna stop walking for this one. And 28 millimeters looks more than wide enough, don't you think? We did it. Keep walking. I'm walking here. We've crossed the Brooklyn Bridge and we're having less fun than we expected. But we do now get to meet Chris Brockhurst. He landed at Newark and had to get to Penn Station, has to get to the boat ride we're going on. Don't worry, the boat ride leaves from the same dock it returns to. So we get to see a thing, but we don't cheat by getting ahead. But Chris is arriving. He has all of his luggage from the airport and he's gonna do the walk with us. We'll probably drop his backpack off in time. No, he has to carry it all the way to the Seinfeld Diner? Okay, well you have to tell him that. Let's do a little f8 here and let's look at some detail and sharpness across the frame. Wow, right? Now let's do the same thing at f2.8. What's changed? Not a lot. We made it to the most beautiful building in all of New York City. Oculus. Everyone loves it. Every single New Yorker I've ever met is like, Oculus, favorite building ever made, New York City. Ooh, rice balls. Hi, I'm making a YouTube video. Can I take your portrait? Look at you guys. Let's go inside for real.
Imagine this is where they all hang out.
This is where the Nintendo Mii's hang out? Yeah, I can see that.
Look at that. They're all hanging out.
These are Nintendo Mii's. These are all your characters. If you ever made a Wii character, they just hang out in this area here. With the IBIS in most of the current Sony cameras, you can handhold, I'm gonna say 2 seconds. If you take a few frames, you really kind of stabilize yourself. If you stabilize yourself against something like that, you're fine. I'm gonna handhold a 1 second exposure here, so I get a little bit of Tim called it the douchebag hipster motion blur by dragging the shutter. So here we go. There we go. No ND, just shot it at f/22, which, I don't know, is that recommended for human consumption? It did the job. Tim's trying the same, he's trying a 4-second with his X100V. No IBIS, no chance this photo works. But he has a built-in ND. And not so good.
It's perfect.
One thing I look for is natural frames. So rather than just getting building out in world, it's a little bit nicer to kind of bring it to something that you could experience here. So I got some leaves. I don't know. Chris Brockhurst is here. Welcome to the party.
It's nice to be here. It's a lovely morning. I am hot. I need to change into shorts.
And you woke up at 3 in the morning?
No, I got here at...
You have to talk into my chest.
Oh, okay. We're there, are we? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna...
I got up at 4 this morning. Yes, it was early. I'm tired. But this will help.
We're going out on a boat, so to get a perspective that's not just you on the boat facing out of the boat, this Insta360, I like the 1X2. The 1X3 has a larger screen. I'm very happy with the 1X2. And now I can do fishing rod, and this disappears. So you put this out the side, and it looks like you have a little drone, a little follow cam.
It's a long stick.
Oh no, everything's gone wrong. No, this isn't gonna hold. Here we are on the boat, got my fishing rod out the back, and we're gonna go see the Statue of Liberty. Everyone knows that high noon is the best time of day for lighting for photography, so that's why we chose specifically this time to go out. There we go. The Tamron 28-75 is an incredible lens for all day filming. In a situation like this, when you're out in the hot sun, in the bad light, it's just nice. We're capped here. If I had a prime, I couldn't get the shots that I want, but now we can get that shot, world trade at 28, and at 75. If I didn't have the 75, I'd be putting on another lens, and I'd be like, oh, let's see. And then I'd try it, and I would waste time. Now, everything just in one lens, inexpensive, just nice. That completes the Insta360 section of the video, I believe. Oh my gosh, Chris, is that a Tamron lens?
This is a Tamron lens. It's the 5400, or you go and crop 600.
Damn.
Then it goes from 50 to
And
400.
it's like, it's a good size. Like, put it back in the barrel, and it's like,
yeah, like for traveling, like it's a solid size.
oh my gosh, it's Kylie Jenner. Oh, hi there. You caught me with my Tamron 28-75 f2.8. Tamron 28-75 has one button and a USB-C port. That's it. Sony lenses, you're gonna see a bunch of sliders and buttons. With the Tamron, they keep it pretty simple. Get that one button, you can set up what you want that to be. And the USB-C, you can go into your computer to the Tamron lens utility. Lady in green.
We can get the lady from here.
Ooh, a trash barge.
Incredible. Oh, that is the money shot there. Look at that. Ooh.
Here at the Statue of Liberty, the The Statue of Liberty was actually a gift from the Tamron Corporation. Not a lot of people know this, but back in the, I think it was 1800, 1700, how old is this thing? Back in the 1200s, Tamron was like, you know what? We want a thing for photographers to come out here and do. So they sent this as just a way to get photographers out here to take some pictures with the Tamron lenses. I think when they installed the Statue of Liberty, they were really thinking about this 28-75. Street photography with the Tamron 28-75 right now. Let's go. There's one. It's still there. Just from the hip street photography here in New York. You can't do this in Japan. It's frowned upon. In New York, no one has rights though. No privacy here. Everyone, street photography subject. My sneaky approach to street photography is that I'm very introverted and I feel very uncomfortable if anyone was ever to approach me and get into a confrontation. So my street photography approach is to pretty much just pretend like I'm playing with my camera and that I don't really know what I'm doing. But you can get like remarkably close to people like that. Like I just got 2 pretty close-up shots of him and he didn't care. You really got to know where your frame's at. You kind of walk around, you shoot a little bit, you review, you see what you did right, and you start just kind of trying to visualize what those frames actually look like. And at some point, see, they looked at me. That was so perfect. But we made eye contact and they're like, we know we look cool, don't take our picture. Or take our picture. Has Empire State Building in the background, everything.
That was everything.
Instead, and I usually shoot with my LCD closed, or literally this will be my street photography strategy. Here, I'm gonna take like 5 photos of Tim. Sideways. And one of the things that I guess I rely on is that this camera makes really fast decisions for exposure, and I have it locked for white balance. But I'll dial the ISO up a little bit because I know I'm moving the camera quite a lot. So I want to basically be maxing out on the shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. But then because it's hot and sunny, you kind of balance that against the fact that it's just, if you're at ISO 400, your photo's gonna be a little bit overexposed. So you figure out what that right balance is. Keep your shutter speed up. I like to shoot an aperture priority for this just because we're going from sun to shade and also pointing my camera in kind of all different directions. So it's a bit of a challenge to keep it locked down to something really specific. We've now walked all the way to the Central Park area, which means we've walked about 20 kilometers or 12.5 miles, but there's still a lot to go. We did go by the hotel so Chris could drop off his backpack, and we successfully navigated around and did not go into the Margaritaville in Times Square. We have been trying to stay on the shade side of the street, but it's honestly so hot. It's impossibly hot out today. I think the heat is starting to make me go a little bit crazy. 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 These pretzels are making me thirsty. 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 Thirsty.
It's a puffy shirt, a puffy shirt, a puffy shirt, a puffy shirt. Wine is wine is glass, 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 wine is glass. It's so hot today, hot today, hot today. Pretzels, pretzels, pretzels.
We made it to Central Park, where the pigeons live. The problem is they made this big, stupid, tall building that's taller than all the other stupid, tall buildings. Makes the skyline here look a little bit dumb. I didn't think it was wide enough. And again, Tamron proved me wrong. It is the worst time of day for lighting to be here, though.
That building looks so strange.
I think it's voice activated, you just yell.
You say photo, picture,
Take
go.
photo.
Still as hot as ever. So while the light is improved, our user experience of the light has remained the same. Hot sadness.
My sweatiness has improved too. As in I got more sweaty.
We've made it to the Met. Tamron 28-75 is doing great. We're not doing so great. We still got 40-something blocks to go. We had lunch with Stacy from Tamron. She was like, East Side's probably a better way to go. Get to see the Met, get to see Guggenheim, and that's what we're doing. Chris is still here. Still hot. We made it to the Guggenheim. What's your first impression of the Guggenheim?
I thought this was a parking lot. In England, we have parking lots from the 70s that look just like this. It's like a spiral that you drive up. So, sorry, Guggenheim.
We made it to 88th Street though. That's impressive. That's like, we had to make it to 112th, but we have to go several blocks this way. But we're like close. We're gonna be there well before Blue Hour, so it kind of ruins the shot that we had in mind. But that's fine, because this project was not as fun. The lens has been great. So we've come into the Guggenheim where George Costanza, I believe, was the lead architect on the addition. And there's air conditioning in here. So primarily coming in here for the air conditioning. But also, it's a cool spot. I don't know how we do it.
Where'd you park the car? That's one way to do it.
Another nice thing with this 2875 is that it fits easily in a bag this size with all the stuff you'd usually carry around on a day, travel out here in New York City. One more block to the Seinfeld restaurant. It's been a hot dog of a day, and I wouldn't recommend this in the summer. It's 100 degrees, just don't do it. So let's head up a block this way, see the Seinfeld restaurant. And what was the goal? Was it to photograph it? I have to take the picture? Okay. We'll go take the picture. We've done it. We began the day with a mission in Brooklyn. We walked the Brooklyn Bridge, walked all the way here. It was fun. We saw a lot of stuff. You see a lot of stuff when you walk around. I enjoy that. I guess I'll get my camera out now and take the picture. Boom. Done. Now let's go touch it and go to Margaritaville, Times Square, the place where all your wildest dreams come true. The project is complete. We've done it. What a victory for humanity. America now even better because of what we've done here today. We're up here at top of the rock with the Tamron 35 f2.8. So they made a variety of these small prime lenses, and I like them as a walk around all day lens, very low profile. And we're gonna take some pictures, top of the rock, the sun going down, and then into Blue Hour. And that's all I have to say right now. Sometimes you gotta pay for the landscape and cityscape photography. Today we definitely did. Beautiful. There it is, the glass. Oh no. It's not ideal to shoot through glass here, but fortunately there's little cutouts here. We're gonna let the lights go down. We're gonna take more pictures. I really like this artwork because you think it's a mirror, and then it's just not a mirror.
And our first one's gonna be Lindsay, but
here's some of my work. And so give you a new option. Should you go this way or should you go this way? Your decision. Remind yourself.
So I'm going to do things a little differently with 0 slides. Should I ask her
design this and sell this.
We're in Lisbon with the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 G2. A lot of the images that I've been taking over the day have been at f2.8. I really like the look of this lens at 2.8. Some of the time I will stop down to f4 to get a little bit more depth of field. That might mean that I want a little bit more in focus or I'm photographing down a street. In a situation like that, I will usually stop down a little bit, or if I'm doing a group photo with a lot of people, maybe say at a wedding day. As a walk around all day lens, 28-75 is a great range of millimeters, and I've been very happy with it out here in Lisbon. Today's camera is the A7CR, which is a high resolution, relatively small camera body, and it's great as an everyday carry out here in Portugal. For today, I am very happy to just leave my camera on aperture priority mode, and I set my ISO to 200 so that my shutter speed doesn't get too low if we do go into darker environments, but it also would be completely reasonable to use automatic ISO. In your settings, you can set what you want your minimum shutter speed is for automatic ISO, and it can be based on the lens, and it can also be based on the zoom of this lens. So if I'm at 28 millimeters, it's going to be a different lowest shutter speed than if I'm at 75. If you're at 75 millimeters, you're likely going to want a faster shutter speed. The general rule is that you're supposed to keep your shutter speed at least what your millimeter focal length is. So that means that if you're at 100 millimeters of zoom, you should be at 1/100 of a second for shutter speed. And even if you do have good IBIS, which is in-body image stabilization, it's still smart to observe that rule or to just be very aware of it when you're shooting a lower shutter speed to make sure that you have set yourself up to be as stable as possible. Good morning from Lisbon. I'm out here all alone. I'm on the Pocket 3 Osmo and up again. Stress it over and over again. If you want nice locations and you want those really clean images with not a lot of people in them, wake up early. So we're here for morning blue hour, which really isn't that early at all. It's 8 a.m. today. And to talk about two apps that I use pretty often for this style of photography. Number one, I use an app called Alpenglow. It is a pretty simple app. It will tell you when the first light of the morning is. It will tell you when blue hour begins. It will tell you when golden hour begins. And the reason that you'd want to photograph either in blue hour or in golden hour you're going to get those nice warm tones. In blue hour, you're going to get a time when the sky is the same intensity as the incandescent lights over here. And I like that time of day a lot. I feel like it makes a really, really cohesive and nice feeling image. And it's also a little different from the images that you normally see, especially from tourist locations like this. You can also do some nice long exposures at this time of the day. Today, we don't really have a body of water to shoot back at, so we won't be doing that photography in this segment. What I am going to do though, is wait for a trolley to pass these gates over here that you just saw in the background. And I'm going to get that photo and hope that it works out. I feel like it might end up being maybe a little messier than I want it to be, but we're gonna try our best. Another app I use is an app called Sunseeker. It's a bit more of an expensive app. What it does, it will tell you essentially minute by minute where the sun is going to rise, where it's going to be throughout the day, both on the day that we are currently on, as well as the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year, which is what these other lines represent. And you can also time shift this. So if you are out here and you're scouting for a wedding or a portrait session or family session, you can see exactly where the sun, probably in those cases, is going to set and make your life a little bit easier. And also you look cool to your couples to be like, the sun is gonna set exactly right there while the sun is somewhere else, and then you go out for the sunset session and you're exactly bang on. So Sunseeker, it is a bit more expensive, but in my opinion, it's very nice. Oh, and we have a tram right here. Wonderful. Here's the behind the scenes shot. Marshall's not here with me today. All right, as expected, a bit of a messy shot. We got the red lights from the crossing, as well as some people in the frame, as well as a New Time bus. So I'm gonna chase the trolleys now over here to some of the older streets and hopefully get something that works a little bit better. I am going to, I just used Sunseeker, and I see that the sun doesn't really get up over these buildings until maybe 9 or 10. By that time, I will actually be going on with my day, meeting for breakfast with Lindsay and Tim and Kelly. And photography can't be every single trip all the time. We're here for a conference, and that takes priority on this trip. I like this part of Lisbon because it appears to be very clear that they ran out of marble here. The budget just didn't come through, so they're like, how about we make some little paths for the skateboarders? And the rest of it is going to be this weird gravel material. So hopefully they find the budget to fill the rest of this in at some point. I'm kidding, that's probably not the case. That's a nice frame right there. There's also a good direction and a bad direction for blue hour. So the good direction is this direction, this building right here. Like, look at how clean that looks. It's really, really nice. The bad direction, or I guess there's no bad direction, it's just how you use it, is over in this direction where you're just gonna get kind of almost a more neutral light, and you're definitely gonna start to see more golden hour there. So the blue hour is happening over here followed by golden hour over there. And also the alpenglow predictions for sunset, it gave a very low percentage. I feel like that's incorrect. I feel like the blue hour times, the golden hour times, very good. The quality of sunset prediction, very poor. Just look outside and see if the sky is clear, what's going on, or maybe radar to see if there's going to be cloud cover, because I don't trust alpenglow for that. Let's head into the streets for some golden hour street photography. But there's a tram. I'm gonna get this tram shot first. Another thing I'm always looking for, or always happy to include in a photo, is contrast, natural contrast. If you want to go really deep into color theory, you can. There are books, there are apps, there are ways that you can look up complementary colors to at least get started. But the short of it is you probably know what colors look good together, and blue and yellow look pretty good together. I'm gonna see what I can do over here. And also the blue hour with this street is really, really nice right now. I'll turn you around so you can see. There you go, there's that nice natural contrast. Yellow, blue. Gonna wait till the street calms down a little bit and hopefully get one down it. I think there's also something to be said about intentionality of photography. That out here I am, I guess, more so collecting images for this tutorial so we can edit them together. But maybe if you're on a family vacation, you don't have that much time, or you just want to make sure you come back with that one specific image, it makes a lot more sense to set up camp and make sure that that image is going to happen for you, rather than roaming around the streets like I'm doing right now, which is maybe a little bit more chaotic and crazy. But also you can just set out to come back with some really nice images and play the game of photography. I feel like that's what it is, at least for me a lot of the time, that it's fun to go out, create some art that wouldn't have existed otherwise, something that's nice to look at, something that brings you back to the place that you visited, and also maybe something that can make you money someday as well. Speaking of contrasting colors, we got that nice black Mini with some black frames and white building. Let's see if that can work for a photo. Light and learning to see light is, I would say, a lifetime of learning. You're always going to be discovering something different, but I think it's important to start looking a little bit harder at light and why it works. For instance, this building right here, it kind of looks fine on this Pocket 3, but in real life it's for sure lacking some direct light, and direct light will typically bring you more saturation in the colors and also texture as well. Whereas if you rotate this way, these buildings are looking very, very, very nice right now. However, there's not really a photo yet. Here comes a trolley. We'll get the trolley through the gates here. See if that works out. It unfortunately did not work out. Maybe next one. Pretty nice frame for a trolley, I think. Lighting and the way light bounces you'll also start seeing on your face. So right now, you can see that my face is quite red, and it's because I'm standing near a red thing. And as soon as I go over here and I stand near something that's a little bit more neutral, like this wall, I get that nice little bounce off this wall that is not polluting my skin tone with the bright red of over here. This works for buildings as well, that if the sun is hitting a big billboard, it's gonna light the scene in a different way. Maybe that's something you're going for. Maybe that's something unique that you can use. Maybe it is not something that is desired, and that is for you as the artist to decide. So as you can see, the incandescent lights of the city have already been turned off, which is a little bit sad. And another reason to get out here before blue hour. Usually city lights turn off at pretty much exactly sunset most of the time, whether it's by an ambient sensor or it's just time for sunset. That is usually when you lose them. So that's why it's important to get out for blue hour if you do want that scene. There are also absolutely cities that work better in blue hour. I would say Tokyo is one of my favorite blue hour cities. Unfortunately, when you're there in the winter, blue hour only lasts for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So it's a very, very quick opportunity. So you scout it during the day, or you scout it maybe the night before, and you're waiting for that one specific image. It's a nice image over here, got some layers. I'll turn you around. There we go. We got that building layer in the back. I don't know how that neon sign is gonna work out though. I feel like it's distracting. We're gonna continue on, find a tram in Roller Street. Although a tram right here would work. Okay, this one works. Morning golden hour is disappearing, but I did find some nice streets. If a tram would come down it, it would be lovely. I feel like I might wait too long to get a tram through here, but if it does work out, I hear one. I think it was behind me though. I'm gonna take a photo of this street anyways because I think it's really, really nice, even though it's a little bit more Copenhagen than it is Lisbon. Because the sign says Copenhagen. But they left it on, that's nice. One of the reasons that Tokyo photographs so well is because of the lack of street parking. And sometimes a collection of colorful cars ruins a scene. If I turn you around here, that's a pretty nice scene if you were to remove all the cars, but I feel like removing all the cars removes 1/4 of the scene, so you're really not that authentic to what it looks like here. But know that sometimes things look nice in real life, but they just might not work out in a photo. So as you can see on this building behind me here, one of the sides is starting to be illuminated by the sun, and there's a nice sparkle to it. The other side is a little bit darker. So there's definitely a best side, and the subtleties are what is going to make an even better picture for you. Here we have quite a unique building and some security guards. I can make them disappear in post. However, this building is a lot different from anything you'd find in the city, and it doesn't really match with a cohesive gallery unless you built an entire set of images that were very, what do we call it, brutalist. I'm gonna take some photos anyways and see how they work. Some nice leading lines, some nice textures over here, and it's just a really unique and interesting space. So let's take pictures. Some locations like this absolutely lend themselves better to blue hour when you're looking for that really cold world. This would have been a great time to be up here, and maybe I'll have to come back another time. And this walkway is also pretty crazy. I don't know where it leads. I think it leads to a nice photo that's framing the water with some pretty notable architecture on each side. But it is unfortunately not balanced because the sun is rising, and it's just got the side of that building over there. I don't know. It looks cool in real life. Again, not everything works as a photo. Maybe something simple like that as a photo up there. Or this side too, even though it's in shadow still. I feel like it works with the gray and the concrete. Now that the sun is starting to come above the horizon, I am going to go into the streets and I'm going to look for nice pockets of light. And that's what I'm looking for first. So I'm going to look for that light, and then I'm going to figure out if composition can work within it, rather than forcing lighting to work in a composition that it just might not work in. I feel like the lighting makes a unique image, especially this time of the day. It's kind of those fleeting moments of golden hour, and I feel like everyone wants to live life in a sunset. So live life, sunset. I'll put that on a mug. Maybe I won't. Another pretty unique space in the city. What you know about leading lines? Leading lines are an element that will draw you into a scene or direct the viewer's attention throughout the scene. And we found some great ones here. Maybe the most intense example of leading lines I've ever experienced, although everything is kind of angles. So maybe the most extreme example would be all these pillars going into a wall at a 90-degree angle. Trying to make something simple here. I think the natural contrast is going to work well. And it's a very monochromatic in real life image, so I'm going to say that I'm going to lean into that and make this image black and white. Here's an example of when the lighting is really working for a scene, but unfortunately the scene overall just doesn't work. I like the reflectiveness of the glass up there, but there's really nothing going on in the scene other than that sick whip. I guess I missed it. There are a few different ways to photograph morning light like this. You can either photograph the old film days, if you're reading any old film photography tutorials, you usually stand with the sun at your back and you photograph into the scene. With digital, I don't know if I would subscribe to that rule all of the time. I really like to have some backlit images, but I do understand that if you get that nice sunlight into some scenes, it will bring out those natural saturations and colors in a way that you could never do if the scene was backlit. For portraits and people, I love shooting backlit. It's just a more interesting kind of wraparound sun, and skin tones always feel really good. Whereas buildings, I find, can take a little bit more harsh light. And there's a really nice scene setting itself up here, but I don't know if it's gonna exactly work out. We're probably about 15 minutes away from the sun being on those greens, so maybe we'll loop back. I feel like a lot of us will gravitate towards nostalgia over top of a collection of scooters in front of a building. But in 20 years, that collection of scooters in front of the building is going to be nostalgia. And you're gonna look back at that image and be like, that was an interesting time in the world when colorful electric scooters were littered all over cities. And will that be true 20 years from now? I don't know. But I feel like that is very much an image of the time, and one that I would absolutely typically avoid. But I'm actively attempting to get a little bit better at actually documenting what is going on, rather than documenting a more fictionalized version or the movie style of imagery that I see in my mind. We have some nice light happening down this alleyway here by a sign that says Portuguese sardine. So I'm going to hang out here in this nice light for a minute and see what happens. Maybe everything is too reflective here. This might not work. All right, well, I want the Portuguese sardine signage. I unfortunately don't get to have that today. I can, however, have a little natural frame right here, somebody coming around the corner. But now we must wait for an interesting person to do that. Okay, so it didn't happen, and I'm wasting some pretty good light. So I'm going to get back to photography somewhere over here. We're out here in Yoyogi Park with the 28-300 Tamron, and it is the exact correct choice for today, that I'm able to get all the cityscapes I want, but then also there is some dancing over here, and I'm able to get all the way to 300, or on this A7CR, I'm able to get even into crop mode, because it's 60 megapixels in the body, which means in crop mode, I'm still getting a pretty decent file size. Now let's go take some pictures over here. And now we're going to get into editing, and you do have access to the raw files that we're going to edit. So if you're interested in following along, download them now. Here we are in editing. Hope you've been enjoying the tutorial so far. I'm going to walk you through my process for editing images, what I do for my actual real life travel and landscape photography, and give you some tips along the way. I have selected a number of images. You have access to the raw files if you do want to follow along, but I've selected images that will hopefully show you at least the most common things I do. If I find myself in a situation where I need to figure something out, usually I just go on Google and watch a quick tutorial. But I would say the majority of my day-to-day tasks that I would use on a weekly or monthly basis, I'm going to cover within this video. We're going to be in Lightroom Classic. So there are free versions as well, not of Lightroom, but of competitor products. You can also do a lot of this on your phone, even with raw files. At least for myself, the workflow, because I do process a lot of images, it just makes sense for me to use a computer and to use Lightroom Classic. But if you're on iPad, there's options. Or if you just want to be using your phone, that is fine as well. There is a package. So Adobe is unfortunately a subscription platform, and you can get the Lightroom Classic package, or I guess it comes with all Lightrooms as well as Photoshop. That's one of the package deals. And then it gets really expensive as soon as you want to get into their more advanced programs for video editing. But there is an entry-level tier for just Lightroom and just Photoshop. And I'm going to do the Lightroom work first, and then we're going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to show you some things that I do there rather than in Lightroom. Although I feel like Lightroom's finally caught up to a point where it's very, very rare that I actually have to go into Photoshop to do anything. Lightroom Classic, let's import our raw files. You can either, you can find them this way, or you just drag and drop them. That's what I'm going to do. They are a little out of sequence here, so I'm going to kind of flip the sequence. We're going to start with some Iceland images, and then we're going to come into some more city stuff. All right, and now we just import. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You'll boot into library mode, and I feel like there's more options. So if you don't want to see all these options up here, I feel like it comes with like all these enabled. And I like to just get rid of them because I only really ever use library and develop. If you are doing something that requires a map, or you're making books, or you're making slideshows, or you're printing, or you're making websites, maybe that will work for you. Also, something that I noticed, my friend Sam Hurd spoke to this. that Lightroom runs a little bit faster if you just close the histogram. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if it's maybe more stable now, but a few versions ago, it was a significant difference. So I kind of closed that. I'll leave it open for this tutorial just because we're gonna talk a little bit about the histogram. But if you don't need it, best practice might be to hide that so it speeds your computer up a little bit. And for library mode, I would say the main benefit of it is just tagging your images. So it's very quick to go through images in library mode, as you can see here. So you can star them, you can use the number 5, you can set rating to 5 for any of the images you want to keep, set rating to 1, you can also do color labels as well. And it's just an easy way to sort your images. You also might see on the channel that I use a program called Photo Mechanic. So this is Photo Mechanic, and for weddings specifically and for large volume, I prefer to do it this way. You can absolutely do everything in Lightroom, but I like, I don't know, just the way that I can organize and see everything within Photo Mechanic a little bit better. But again, you can do everything here in Lightroom. You also have some basic controls in Library as well. So one thing that I will actually do, if I get that AI edited gallery back from a wedding day, I will go through and I will bump my exposure up a little bit. This arrow here is 1/3 of a stop, so it will make things just a little bit brighter or just a little bit darker. You can also use this to add 1 full stop, I believe, make it a little bit more contrasty, a little less contrasty. You can also do white balance as well in here. Just little nudges. And one hidden feature that I feel like not many people are aware of in Lightroom, or it's not hidden, but it's just something that I didn't discover until like last year, that you can do batch corrections. So say you shot everything at a slightly too cold of white balance, you can now adjust every single image to be a little bit warmer or a little bit cooler, or a lot warmer or a lot cooler. And when you're in develop mode, you can also do that, but you'll be syncing whatever that white balance is. So if I'm at 6,000 and plus 13 here, and I do the sync, that's going to sync that exact white balance across the entire board. Whereas when you're in library mode, bumping that up just moves everything incrementally. So if this one is at 6,000, it's gonna move it to 6,200 maybe. And it's gonna move this one, if this one's at 7,000 Kelvin, we'll talk about Kelvin and white balance in a minute, it's gonna bump it to 7,200. So it's gonna just bump it up, which is super, super helpful. That's pretty much all for library mode, to be honest. You can also make, if you are making your selects, you can make things smaller, you can make things bigger. We're gonna go right into develop mode with the most boring and standard travel photo that I think exists here. Now here we are. There's a few things that I would do to a standard image. And one of those things is coming down here. I have my full preset pack is available if you do want to get it. And I usually will select a preset for a trip. So if I am in Lisbon like this, I know it's going to be warmer tones. I know it was nice and sunny most of the trip. So something like Clean works very well, or something like T1 also works very well. This is a little bit of a softer feeling to the image. Or if you want to get more into the film feeling, you can go to Gold 2024. I am going to go Clean 2021. Here we go. Or this is the problem. Which one do you go with? That or this? I'm gonna go with this. Spring T1. Already pretty happy with that image. I think it's important, as we talked about in the tutorial, it is important to do as much as you can in your camera within your power. There are some things that, for instance, really high contrast scenes where you have a very, very bright sky, you kind of have to expose for the highlight in digital. And so maybe you're gonna be exposing things incorrectly, and there's a few of those that I'll talk about within this edit. But for the most part, do the best you can to get everything right in camera. That includes the white balance that you want to be shooting. So as like that, you just kind of add one preset and you're done. You can even just use a straight out of camera JPEG and I'd be pretty happy. Moving over here, I'm going to walk you through everything that I would typically use. So I'm going to leave some things out because they're just things that I don't typically use. I use exposure. I would say this is my most used slider. You can also add these, I'm sure there's hotkeys associated with it. You can also get physical controllers as well, which are kind of fun. I would say that this is the #1 thing that I'm using on a day-to-day basis. Highlights would probably be my secondary because I am usually, at least in the wedding space, I'm usually dealing with highlights, so white dresses and just really contrasty environments. So I tend to expose, we'll use Tim's shirt as an example. So I tend to expose for the scene. So if it's somewhere like that and then Tim's shirt's just looking a little too bright, I'll bring the highlights down to make sure that these highlights stay in there. Now, talking about the histogram up here, this gives you an okay visual representation of what's going on. I know a lot of people live and die by this thing, but overall, I trust my monitor, at least if you're on an Apple device, or if you're on, this is just a BenQ monitor. If you're comfortable with the monitor that you have, I feel like I am fine to edit from that. I've done a pretty good job of making the environment around here controlled enough so it's not that there's no direct sun on my computer screen right now, as well as a pretty standard color of lights in here as well. So I'm pretty comfortable to do that. Where a histogram might come in place is if you are editing on an unknown monitor and you're like, I don't know if that is where the highlights are or down here. And if you see your histogram all stacked up all the way down here, it could be the vibe you're going for, especially for instance, if there's if Tim was lit by an off-camera flash and he was very bright, this could be an okay histogram, that it might be this, and there might be a little bop right here of where that off-camera light would be. And then on the other side, if everything's all stacked this way, you know you're not doing so good. So the idea is to pretty much never put anything that's gonna be completely on this side of the histogram or on this side of the histogram, unless you're looking for those pure blacks or pure whites. And if you do start to clip some things or you're a little bit nervous, you can just put your mouse over here and it will show you in red there the highlights that are completely gone at this point. But I don't know. I am pretty comfortable to just go by my monitor. Contrast, as you can see, it does contrast. I'm sure you know what contrast is. You can also double click any of these and they'll just go back to zeros, which is really nice. Shadows increase the shadow tones. I would say overall we're going to show in masking how to hide that a little bit better, because when you start to crank shadows, it's all right to that point, but then at some point it starts looking like that really high dynamic range HDR that's not so good. So that is something that I tried my best to avoid. I want to keep it as natural and simple as possible. I would say overall, maybe film is my reference, that anything that a film photo couldn't naturally do, I'm probably not going to do it in a digital image. The white's actually coming down like that works pretty well, to be honest. It makes it feel very nice. And black point, there's also ways in here to add natural contrast as well. So rather than just cranking this to 100, you can kind of add that natural contrast by lowering the black point. So what that's doing is it's just lowering the black point in the image. And there's gonna be somewhere in there that feels pretty good to you. And for me, I'm gonna say it's right about there. Moving into texture, clarity, and dehaze. So dehaze, I feel like isn't a tool that I use too often. I used to use it a lot for starscapes. So if there's a nice star scene and maybe there was some ambient light pollution in there, I would usually crank that dehaze, but it just does some weird things. I will use texture a little bit. I feel like these tools really quickly take over an image. So at most I'm going +20 on that. I usually leave it at 0. And clarity, as you can see, it makes it look really not so good. So clarity, I'm usually laying off it a little bit. And then for vibrance and saturation, with the exception of this preset, I usually prefer vibrance. So if I'm adding, if an image just isn't saturated enough, I'm usually adding vibrance. I'm not gonna do it that crazy, but I'm usually adding just a little bit of it. I feel like everything is in moderation when it comes to photo editing, and you might learn a new skill today and you might be like, that's like all I wanna do. And do your best to know when to use it and to dial it back a bit, because for me, at least for editing, I went a little bit too hard into it. Your tone curve, so if you are using some presets, they're probably gonna have some sort of tone curve in there. This one here, there are a variety of different things you can do here. I'm not gonna get too in depth into it unless there is an image that requires it. But basically you can have full control over your colors in the specific space that you want it. So somewhere down here, you can see that this matches with the histogram here. So if I'm cranking this to red, all the way from this, this blue down here, you'll see that the reds take over in just that mid-tone environment. Or if you just want, I don't know, there's some crazy stuff you can do. The more chill you can keep it there, probably the better. And I would say a little S curve like this, usually I'll do something like this. And just something like this, a little S curve is usually a more standard way to set up your tone curve. But there's also some tone curves built into your preset template here that would come with Lightroom as well. For color mixer, if you want to get really specific, we'll do this in a few photos, but you can change very specific color tones. So say, let's see, we want to change Tim's pants and we want to change everything that's that blue color. You can crank the saturation, his pants get crazy. You can remove it so everything's a lot more muted and subtle, but then you can also change the color kind of entirely. So if you want it to be nice and purple, you can also make it really bright. There's a lot of different things you can do. And again, err on the side of just keeping things as natural as possible. For color grading, this came, I think, from the cinema side of things. And if you want to play around with it, you can. If you want to add some nice highlights there, that actually looks pretty nice. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting that to look dumb like the other stuff. But overall, I kind of add a little bit of a split tone. So I will add a little bit of blue in my presets to my shadows, and then a little bit of yellow on my highlights. So there's a little tiny bit applied there. Not much, just a little bit. And I kind of like it up there as well. So midtones, you can really influence an image heavily. With the highlights, you can also change that image and leave it somewhere there more natural towards that. And then I just like some blue in the shadows. I don't know what it is. It's just something that is my personal preference. Next up, detail. Now we come here into sharpening and in detail. And what that does is makes your image more sharp. It won't make an out of focus image in focus, but as you can see, it really turns up the sharpness there. I would say there's a limit to it. You can add a little bit of sharpening. It also depends on just your taste overall. And also if you're going to be printing something. So if you're gonna be printing a large print, I would suggest watching a tutorial on specifically sharpening for that, because it does change and it makes your prints a heck of a lot better. There is a noise reduction. I don't know if we're gonna get to it in any of these photos, because high ISO performance of all the cameras I used is very, very nice. But there is an AI denoise, and it is quite amazing, to be honest. Try this out with an image that you're like, wow, it's way too grainy for me to do anything. And it will denoise it, and it will give you another a DNG file, which is a raw file. It'll spit another one out that's going to be an incredibly enhanced version of your photo with no noise. But if you just want to do some simple noise reduction, you can do it that way. This was mostly if I screw something up and I'm just way too high of ISO, or if I massively underexpose an image and I have to add more exposure than necessary. So once you start to get into, I would say around here, around 3 stops in exposure, you start to notice that it's really struggling to keep the image clean, and especially if you're up around 5 and you're recovering just a very, very dark image, you're gonna notice that it's going to get a little too grainy. For lens corrections, I actually leave my lens corrections off. So you can enable profile corrections, and basically Lightroom and Adobe, they have an idea of like, hey, maybe this lens, it's a little bit distorted in this specific pattern, and it will fix it for you. You can also remove chromatic aberration, which is those color fringes that you kind of see sometimes. I don't think you're gonna see any in any of the Tamron lenses really, unless I work a file really, really hard. But enabling profile corrections is a nice thing if you want that really clean kind of edge to edge image. As you can see, without profile corrections, it's a little, I'm not even gonna call it really distorted, but you can see that there's definitely some differences to the profile corrections. And you can also add your own distortion correction as well if ever required. If you're using a lower quality lens, I would say usually that's something that you might want to consider, but with these higher quality lenses, I have no issues whatsoever. I will usually use the auto button on transform here, and a lot of the time, I don't know if I was just staring at that for too long, but a lot of the time it will do a perfect job of making lines go up and down for you. So if you're photographing a building straight on, it'll make things just feel a lot more professional. In this case, because I feel like maybe the street is slanted that way, it does a bit of a weird thing. So I almost prefer it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna add that. The lens blur, I don't think I've ever used it. That's how often I use it, that I opened it and I got a pop-up. But if you do want to play around with that, feel free. I just do everything, at least in my lens, for that. And then effects, you have some post-crop vignetting. So if your lens is vignetting in one way or another, you can use that. These lenses don't really vignette too heavily. And you can also add grain. So if you want to add that film grain, you're able to do that as well. Now, we're gonna get to these tools up here, which is crop. So crop is a tool that I use pretty often, I would say. A few different ways to use it. You can either just grab it on the side here and rotate your image around to make sure that it's exactly straight, hit enter, or you can actually draw a line. So say there's a line right here and you want the image to be centered on that. Now that is the straight line, and it has adjusted the image around that. So if you are going to be printing in 8.5 by 11, you can do those crops. You can also lock it, so it's always locked to the original aspect ratio, or if you don't care, you can unlock it and then you're just able to crop however you want. That is all for this image. We're gonna move on to the next image, and I'm gonna talk about these other 3 tools that I might use from time to time. We're gonna go to the boat. Let's begin here in Iceland. This is called sensor noise or sensor dust, all these dots. And I thought that, well, I did this unintentionally, and I didn't notice it on my LCD because Sony screens aren't so great, so pay extra attention. But there are ways to remove these, and I feel like this is something that I do pretty often. So we're going to come down here into remove, and now you can use generative AI. So this is definitely bridging into the Photoshop space. It used to be that if you wanted to do any sort of generative AI, you had to do that in Photoshop, but now you don't. And there are a few different ways to do it. So if you don't want to use the fancy remove tool, you can use just the this remove tool, the healing brush, and it happens pretty fast. So it'll fix your thing up pretty quickly there. As you can see, that dot is gone. Now it's back. You can also use a clone stamp, so you can set a point that you want to paint from, and you can duplicate that for you if you want. But now we're going to remove that, and we're going to use the fancy new one we're not going to use generative AI. If you want to use that, that's fine. You can also just delete those. But it's going to happen, it's going to work a lot faster if you just use it on your machine. So there you go, we're deleting them. But if you're like, wow, there's way too many and I can't see them all, you can actually visualize spots. So here's technically all the sensor dust that's there. So get your sensors clean. That's the word of warning for the day. But there are some that are going to be a lot more apparent than the others. And you can go through in this view and you can remove them all out. There's probably also an automated way to do this. We're gonna try that after. I haven't actually used it. I used it in a program called Luminar, which was great. And it actually did most of the spots. So there it is. By us doing it manually, I'm going to undo all of these. And as you can see, there was a lot of them in here, like around here. I guess you can see them. Yeah, it's a good job. And then if there is something that you want to remove, that's we'll find another one. We'll go over here for the example. So detect objects. If you want to say remove the focus point of this this photo here that we're going to get to in a minute, and you want to remove that, you can just remove it that way, and it'll replace it with something. And that one is without generative fill. And then if you wanted to use generative fill, it's going to do a better job of a situation like that. And then it's just gone. But we're going to bring that back. That one's important. So here we are. We're going to first fix my mistakes, visualize spots. We're going to go through and we're going to remove the big ones. We're going to leave those ones. Those ones are fine for now. The smaller ones. This is also another reason to change your lenses in better environments. So the A7 IV that I used in this doesn't have any sort of sensor shield, so it's just the sensor exposed. And if you're changing, say, in a dusty environment or on a beach or something like that, you might find some things find their way into your sensor. You can also change the brush size, either smaller or larger, by using the brackets tools. So left makes it smaller, right makes it bigger. I do use that a lot. All right, we're going off visualize spots. There it is. Beautiful. All right, now we come down here and we decide which preset is going to look the best. I think a black and white preset is going to work very well, but for our examples here, I'm going to use something that is color. Let me use that. Gold, no grain. So I'm going to show you one thing that you can do here, and I can still see the sensor noise spots now that they've become apparent to me. The other reason that you can see the spots is because I was not using an ND filter on this shot. So I am at f22. If I was at f2.8, like I have been at other photos in this set, you're not going to see the sensor dust. But the smaller you make that aperture hole on the front of your camera and it sends the light down the lens, the more it's just going to pick up all those sensor spots. So if you are shooting at f1.4 all the time, like I do, you might not be aware of how dirty your sensor actually is, because when you look at it, you usually don't see it. One thing that I do a lot for images is I do graduated filters. So there are a few different ways to do it. You can come over here. You actually now have tools that if I just wanted to only select the subject, it's gonna select the boat for me. And I can now adjust just the boat. It's a little messy because there's some ropes in there. I'm gonna delete that. You can also select just the sky. So if you only wanna play with the sky, you can do that. If it's a person, it's a cleaner line, it's gonna do a better job, but something like that, you can make it a lot more dramatic. You can also do different gradients here. So I usually use this, which you can use, or you can activate just by hitting the M key. So a lot of the time I'll just hit the M key and then I will drag down like this. Typically what I'm doing is I am bringing down highlights to preserve things like the sky, and maybe even adding some warmth to it or some blue if I want to kind of match that image. So I am pretty happy with that. And I may be doing things a little more intense than I normally would. I would also come down here and you can remove some saturation from the blue, so you can get rid of it completely and just make it almost a black and white blue sky image. But somewhere around there feels a little bit better to me. I don't want it to be as crazy like that. Something like that, I feel, is nice. So a photo like that, I would probably usually just do this and be done with the image. But having it in color, I feel like is nice. You can also come down here and say you wanted to bring out a little bit of the saturation down here in this grass. There you go. You can also make it green. So if you want to make it green, you can do that. Or orange. Green is probably better. Maybe when you get to a point you're like, yeah, that looks great, I usually dial it back just a little bit. So if 68 was like, that's looking really good, maybe I'm gonna come back to somewhere like that. I should point out, and you've probably already seen it, that whenever you're doing this, you're actually influencing everything in the scene. So you're making stuff that was yellow on the boat, you're turning that green. So something to be aware of, or you can mask out and do very specific corrections if you want. And then I'm also going to, I'm gonna hit M again. And if I do wanna brighten up a scene, so right now that filter is affecting just that corner. And you might be like, oh, I just wanna crank the exposure. That looks kind of crazy. It looks very fakely lit, right? So I'm going to actually lower the contrast and I'm going to bump up the shadows to a point that feel natural. So I find that doing that allows me to hide edits a lot better. I also do this if I'm using the brush as well. So usually if I'm using a brush, I'm just trying to do some very small adjustments. And again, using the bracket key to open that. And you can hide it a little bit better than if you're just trying to crank the exposure on it. So if you are trying to lighten something up, usually that is the way to go about it. Next up, more sensor dust, still shooting, F16, too much. Click over here and I'm going to remove. That's good for that. And this scene looks pretty nice. I feel like all the pieces are there to make something really dramatic. So I now choose, it's a pretty monochromatic scene actually. So it's almost a black and white scene on its own. So maybe I begin with something with a little bit, we're gonna choose that for now. You can also change the amount that your preset takes effect. I think it's gonna be, we're gonna do it in color, but then I'm probably gonna come back to it and do it in black and white. So you can select the sky if you want, if you just wanna play with the sky here, and you can bring that down a bit and highlights. Something to be aware of, if you don't have a clear horizon, sometimes you'll get a little like obvious line where you obviously edited. Here it blends pretty well, but sometimes you'll get a really crisp edge and it'll be very apparent what you've done. I can kind of see it like along here. So don't go too hard. Again, do what you think is good and dial it back a little bit. I'm going to bump up a little bit of shadows, and I feel like I am slightly off center there. And that feels pretty nice to me. There are ways that you could make this disgustingly textured if you wanted. That's not it. Don't do that ever. But you can add more texture into the scene if you want, and it might enhance it for you or it might not enhance it. You can also play around. So for me, that's kind of where I was pretty happy with it. But if a shot like this feels a lot more like you, that is totally fine to do as well. When it comes to white balances, auto usually does a pretty good job. So this kind of makes it look almost a little bit too much like a sunset for me. I kind of like the blue tones. You can either use the defaults in here. If you're shooting raw, you can change your white balance to whatever. So you can change it to daylight if you want, or you can get crazy and change it to tungsten, make everything real blue. Or you can actually come in here and you can adjust it exactly as you want. I would say 98% of the time I'm adjusting white balance, I'm usually using just the blue to yellow slider, especially if it's anything to do with skin tones. And pretty rarely I'll actually be using the magenta to green. You can also use a dropper tool. So if you have something that's a neutral tone, like this black rock here, you can just drop the dropper on that and it will read that. So if you have like a medium gray suit or something, it's usually really good. And hopefully that will make your white balancing of scenes a little bit better. And then typically what I'll do is if I've decided like this is the white balance for this set of images, I will hold down Shift and I will select all the images that I would like to add that white balance to. And I will hit Command Shift S and it will pop up and it will allow you to however many things you want to copy over. So if you do want to copy over all those sensor dust removal points, you can do that. Or if you just want the white balance, you can check none and just do white balance only. All right, pretty happy with that image. Moving on to the next one. F10, finally some sensor dust disappearing. Sorry to run you through this demo of sensor dust, but it's a real life problem that even professional photographers experience. So a shot like this is kind of the Sphinx rock. I don't know if you can see that little nose there. This one is typically, I would say, you know what? That gold looked pretty darn good. So if you mouse over any of these, it'll show you the preview of it. And I was drawn to that gold, and I am happy with that. Now it is up to you to decide if this foreground here is too distracting. If it is distracting, you can get rid of it either by cropping or with the generative fill. I'm also going to let it be whatever aspect ratio it decides. So I feel like that over there is important. And maybe something like that is a little more what you're feeling. And I'm honestly pretty happy with that overall. If you want to show the before and after, so that was on the before. So you can hit the slash key, so the slash, and it'll do the before and afters for you. I'm honestly really happy with the way that image came together. I'm going to see if the highlights coming down help it or hurt it. And also, again, don't make it too crazy, but something like that. And then maybe a few little dusts in here can go away. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't know, I kind of enjoy having the foreground there. I'm gonna add it back. That's an image I'm happy with. That's all. I would say typically, so we've been going through some pretty heavy edits. Again, I'll do my sensor dust demo. We've been going through some pretty heavy edits here, but now I would say typically, so this is the straight out of camera image as it is. You have access to this raw file. And now I'm kind of interested in this gold no grain. Yeah, honestly, that's really nice. I did use the ND filter, the variable ND filter on here, even at f22 because I wanted an 8-second exposure. And the polarization will sometimes bring in some colors over here. So it would have been great if it would have kept this consistent. It's sometimes the problem with using variable NDs, the way that the filters twist together. Sometimes you get more of a circular polarization pattern over here and a little bit less over here. So I'm going to do what I can. There's, I guess, so this is a little too far gone. I would say that this is a pure white or it's just a white cloud. So I'd almost lean more into that and do something like that. I've also, at least with this preset, so there is no pure white in this preset. So if it's there, that is a pure white. You can see that reflected in the histogram. But if I pull that down, there is no pure white in there. It's almost a gray. And that kind of hides my errors that I made, that this highlight got a little too bright. Maybe I should have underexposed, or I should have only done a 5-second exposure here in order to retain more of that highlight. But as you can see, it's barely there. It's there though, that's nice. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm happy with it. Again, if you do want to get into playing with the colors here, you can brighten some things up a little bit and make things really your own if you want. And I'm happy with that image. Probably also worked pretty well in black and white. Now it works better in color. All right, sensor dust demo. Begin. I'm getting pretty quick at it. I know where the big ones are. Sorry if this is bothering you a lot, because it's bothering me now that I've seen this. And you can see, again, variable ND filter coming in a little too hot. Circular polarizing filter would also kind of do the same thing. You just have to be very aware of your full entirety of your frame, which is a little, I think, annoying. And also you'll fall into the trap of not knowing if sensor dust is in fact on your camera or if it's just dust on your computer screen. That's something I've been dealing with for a few minutes here. This straight out of camera image, so if I was just doing a straight out of camera image, I might do something like that. I might bump the shadows up a little bit, and then I might bring the black point down. Maybe we're going back up here. Something like that might be all right to me. I would also hit the M button and bring down the sky a tiny bit here, even just the highlights, and hit M again and bring a graduated filter in from this side. Highlights again, and something like that I'd be pretty happy with. But because I have presets and all these colors kind of built out, I'm really enjoying this no grain preset right now. So I'm going to go with that, and I am pretty happy. Kind of one click with that. So thumbs up to presets and making it just a one-click solution. It does make your life a lot easier, and it absolutely helps keep everything cohesive across the board. All right, next image coming over here. I feel like this image is going to be more of a sunset. So that's the straight of the camera. That's what it looks like there. But with my edit, there we go, beautiful sunset. All right, it doesn't quite work like that, but I'm going to click that gold preset. And something like that looks a lot more sunset-y. I'm also going to consider doing just a sky mask here and bringing in a little bit more of the highlights and adding a little more warmth to it. Now all of a sudden you go from that, which is kind of fine, that was real life. Now you were there in a sunset, and you can do that if you want, or you can also not do that. Just an example of the things you can do. If you are doing a portrait session, you can also use off-camera flash to do that as well. Here we go. Gold, no grain. That's kind of perfect. So I'm exposing, I think it's the same if I'm doing a portrait or if I'm doing a landscape photo. I'm exposing for the subject first. So this is kind of the subject here. And then I'm gonna figure out what I can do with the sky, and maybe we're doing another sky mask there. I appreciate how easy it's been made, because for years it was really challenging to do that, or it took time. Now it takes a couple of clicks. I'm also going to increase the warmth in this image a little bit too. Daylight I think is 5500. So if you're just in the daytime, that's theoretically I think around what it would look like, which actually looks pretty nice. Maybe that's nicer. Or do we prefer warm? I always prefer warm. Today I'm gonna leave it daytime just to make things a little bit different for me. That looks nice. When it comes to cropping, you do the best you can in your camera, but if you do see distracting elements, I don't know if the right-hand side there is too distracting, but I think something like that's a little less distracting. And then there is an element here that I'm going to get rid of. And I think that's power lines as well. So you can also just click at any time. Oh yeah, it's most certainly power lines. So I'm going to turn on the generative AI and maybe detect objects as well. And I'm just gonna do something like this. And we're gonna see how close this gets us to that section. Remove. And it's added more power lines, different power lines. That was no power lines. So that's nice of it. I'm going to go in with another one, and I'm going to make sure that they're all removed. And then that image, and then for me, that image would be done. All right, now into this scene. This is a scene, again, that's very monochromatic, and you can decide whether to lean into that or, again, this is gold, making me pretty happy. A shot like that looks pretty nice. 75 millimeters, f8, 15 seconds, and that gets you that nice soft water coming in there. And yeah, I would say I'm happy with that, but then I would also be very happy with it in black and white. Maybe adding a little bit more shadow so you can just see a little bit more of kind of what's going on up here. I want to see these nice rocks reflecting. And then I was trying to get some, there's really no detail at all. It's just a shadowy, weird looking rock there. This photo, this is one that you could absolutely crank the presence on. Somewhere around there, I'm pretty happy. This would also work really well in black and white. Either look nice. Film, that looks nice too. Lots of options. I'm going to leave it as that. This is really cool. This is weirdly, I think, one of my favorite shots from that trip. Gold, no grain. Looks nice to me. Looks almost like a painting of some sort. So I want to make sure that those, as you can see there, the cloud's a little too bright. Somewhere around there, I have some detail in them. Again, this tone curve doesn't go all the way to white, so you're kind of cheating a little bit by doing that. And I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe add a little bit more, maybe we'll even do a quick little sky here too. And bring the highlights down as well. And something like that I am pretty happy with. A few more here from Iceland, or one more here from Iceland. One click. There's some people over here. You can remove those people if you want, unless you want to leave them. It's fine too. here. All you guys. Maybe detect objects and see if this just goes away. Pretty good. There's also a bridge that goes up there, and now it's gone. There's still a fence. Also, whenever you do these edits, make sure that you zoom in and that it's actually good, because if you go to print it and you notice something like that, it's gonna bother you forever. It looks nice though. Really nice waterfall. Maybe save some of those highlights a little bit more. You can even do something like that. That looks pretty nice. And I said not to crank all this. So if you're cranking the highlights to 0 and then the or minus 100 and then the shadows all the way up, usually it looks a little too HDR, but I think it kind of works okay in this photo. Back to the photo of Tim. Now we're in Lisbon. I'm gonna go with the Spring T1 preset, and travel photos like this, I'm pretty happy with that just as a one-click preset. You can also go through and you can build out exactly what you want everything to look like in terms of colors. So you find an image that you want to absolutely perfect, that you want to spend the time on, and you just go through every single option and you make it look exactly as you want, and then you save it, and then you keep updating it every time you find something that you like a little bit better. That's how I made my presets. Took me many years and many iterations to get to where they're at now. I'll also do a quick little transform in auto, and that makes the buildings more square. I don't know if I like that or not though. I'm gonna leave it, but it's an option. Now here we are in Blue Hour. Very exciting. Blue Hour doesn't handle the that gold preset quite as well. So we're gonna try something different. We're gonna go to clean there. And I don't know, maybe this image doesn't even make the cut. I thought I liked it. I thought when I saw the small version, maybe that's a message to you that every single photo that you select, you don't have to edit and make into something amazing. Okay, gold preset works again. That building looks really nice. Just a testament to good lighting, because the good lighting was on that building. And there we go. That kind of makes it look a little bit weird. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to rotate it just a tiny bit myself. And there we go. Happy with that. You could remove this antenna if that bothers you, or this antenna if it bothers you. This car bothers you, that, whatever that is, little barrier. That should probably go. Anything that's non-permanent, I'm fine to replace. I would have issue if I started just replacing all these windows with something that looked aesthetically better to me. But now we get to Tokyo and we get to some real, real problems of white balance. So some places in Tokyo still use these really orangey lights, which is amazing. I'm gonna try an auto white balance and see how close that gets me. Not so close today. But as you can see, I had to max that out. So this is like 2000 minimum. And I think that looks pretty nice. In real life, the street is very, very yellow. So it's a very nice contrast with the sky there. And overall, that's kind of all I had to do. So originally the image, not so good. Edited into something that looks, in my opinion, pretty nice. And if you are bothered with any of the non-straight lines there, you can probably come down here and hit auto and see if that cleans it up for you. Works pretty well. This sign is a little too bordering on too overexposed. So there you can see if all my highlights go, that's what it looks like. Something around there is maybe better. And then you can also go in here and you can just use a brush. So if you do want to bring in some highlight saving into just that sign, you can just brush that sign so that it stays a little more cohesive with the scene. Here we are into something that I will have to increase a lot. So maybe this is our noise sample, although it's not that bad at all. So I clicked the gold preset and then increased this here. And then I'm probably gonna remove this section of the other building or the tunnel or whatever that was, or the bridge. And it did a pretty good job, but gotta get that top piece. Did it go away? All right, something like that, pretty happy with. I was underexposing these by a lot, so adding my preset and bringing this, I was underexposing typically to make sure that I preserve these highlights here. So if you see the original, I'm kind of exposed for these highlights roughly. Maybe this is too extreme of an example, but when it's dark out, sometimes you just don't see it, that your screen's very bright. And auto, that's what it looks like there, but I like it in kind of the purpley blue hour that it was in real life. So something like that I'm happy with. Even make it a little more blue if you want, or a little less purple. you have all the controls and abilities in the world. Now we're kind of getting into the flow of how fast I would usually edit these. So clicking the preset button. You can also, if you do know you're going to be using the same preset on a lot of photos, you can just select them all. You can hit Command Shift S, and then you can copy everything that you want over. So if you want all the basic and the tone curve and color mixer and the grading and detail and lens corrections and everything, it will just bring it over to all those images. So a lot of images, you might even notice that you don't have to do anything at all really, that they're just kind of done when you go to them. And you can hit export. And I'm sure there's gonna be some sort of technical way at some point in the future that we can just do that almost automatically. I feel like this is one of those images that I thought was gonna work well, but the perspective just isn't really there. So I'm gonna move on to the next one, and we're gonna hit that gold preset once again. I think this looks nice. This is for sure one that I hit the transform button on because it's a lot of lines, and maybe even this is a black and white image, even though it's blue hour. I feel like giving away the blue hour tones is a little sad, but I feel like it works in black and white. Let's try something else. Let's try the Spring TI here. And let's see how auto does. Pretty decent actually. If I wanted to, I could remove all these cones and this here. I feel like these are the things that are drawing my eye away, as well as this here. Everything else I would leave. I feel like it's a pretty cool scene overall. This building is just really unique, and I like it. I would probably also should have, I don't know if it was in the original shot, but yeah, I was a little too close on this. I wish that I would have taken a step back or even just got to about there. So I still had the full vending machine in there. Otherwise, I'm tempted to make it disappear because it's very distracting and it's not entirely in the frame. Next up, and almost overly Japanese. So you can see how much the highlights affect that. I'm going to do an auto white balance. Ah, it looks good. So it was during blue hour. I like that. That looks pretty darn nice. Pretty happy with that photo. Now to a few portraits. We're gonna go to Spring TI, Fallen Angel, the dancers at the park. Big fan of these guys. They've been doing it every Sunday for, I think they missed 1 or 2 Sundays since like the 70s or 80s. And something like that I'm pretty happy with. For people, I find that it is best to expose for their skin tone as well as white balance for skin tones as well. So as you can see, trying to keep that as natural as I can. And even if that means that the background colors get a little bit crazy, you can fix that with a mask, but I'm kind of fine to let those go in order to make sure that the person in the photo looks the best they possibly can. This looks darn nice. Shout out to my friend Rico for bringing us down this alleyway. He knew exactly where he was going. And if you do hit the auto and you get those white bars, you can try constrain and crop, and it might work for you. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go all the way to the edge. And I might even come down beyond this sign here. So we're making a weird crop, but I think it works all right. It's a square. You don't usually see square crops, but I think it brings a lot more focus. So the original image, I guess you can't see it, but it was a lot taller and a little bit distracting. This image here, just happy with it. I'm gonna make the entire thing go away. That shadow is meant to live there forever. Into a more challenging photo. I find this, so Shibuya Crossing, I find it to be one of the more difficult photos to take because I've seen it a million times and I want to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to use the M key to bring in a little bit of shadow over on that side, and then I'm gonna hit it again and I bring it in from the top here. And now that the scene feels a little bit more balanced, I'm going to add something like that. And I don't know if that just looks like chaos. Does black and white make it better? Black and white makes it better. So this is up to you and your artist's eye. But I would say black and white makes this a usable image for me, whereas the color version is just like way too crazy. So it's nice to have a subject, and I feel like this has no subject, but it's a nice photo. This has more of a subject. I guess the entire city is a subject, so maybe it also lacks a specific subject, but we're gonna start with that. And we're gonna bring the highlights down because I know when I increase exposure that my highlights are gonna go. And something like that I'm pretty happy with. Might even add a little bit of vibrance. No vibrance. Also for Tokyo, a lot of people have a tendency to just make it look very, very cold Blade Runner. And that's how you do that. You just move the temperature down a little bit. Already shot that photo. And now, here we are in New York. I'm walking here. Gold preset. It is sunset right now, so maybe I'm gonna add a little more sunset. You can really crank in sunset if you want. I think something around there feels pretty natural. I'm also going to make sure that the building is very visible there. And I feel like we're a little off center, so something like that looks pretty good, naturally framed in there. Pretty happy with that photo. Really nothing else that I would change. Now into our last photo. Here we are. It's blue. This is the most blue hour you can get, I think, in New York City. It is a very, very, very nice time to do photography. I would say, that didn't work at all. I would say in terms of my favorite times to take pictures, blue hour would probably be it for cities. In Japan, it's hard because I don't know what it is, but the blue hours are like 4 minutes whenever we're there. Maybe in the summer they're a little bit longer, but I find with New York City that we're just maybe there at better times of the year. So we get longer blue hours and we just do our best to be in the right spot at the right time for that blue hour. And the idea is pretty much you frame up that one photo that you know you're gonna want, and then you just wait for the light to make that photo happen. And if you look at this photo and you're like, oh darn, that's way too much noise in that background. Again, denoise, we're gonna go 63%, enhance. What's that gonna look like? I'm gonna show you in a second, you're gonna be surprised. You can see up here it is creating the DNG, which is a raw file using denoise. You can also do this, you can upscale as well. So if you wanna make a really, really high megapixel image from something that's maybe a smaller megapixel image, you're able to do that. And it is taking my full computer processor power apparently to do this. It sounds like my computer is taking flight. And as you can see, quite a difference. So that is the regular file and that is the DNG. So maybe I processed it a little bit too hard, but all that noise just goes away. I personally like a little bit of texture, so I don't mind having the noise there, but if you're someone that wants no noise, that is the way to go about it. There it is, editing and everything that I would normally do for photos. I can do everything within Lightroom now, which is really nice. I used to have to go into Photoshop to do those specific retouches that if I wanted to make things disappear, there are some lights here that I didn't want to be there. These were things that would sometimes work in Lightroom, but I would most of the time have to go into Photoshop to have more control. Now I don't find myself really using Photoshop at all. There it is. It was so exciting. We were out in the field for a long time and everything was wonderful. And now we're gonna end this video in my somewhat messy office. Thank you so much for being here and making it to the end. I hope that you've learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down below. My preset packs are available if you want them, but you can also build your own, or you can find free ones, or even just use the ones that are built into Lightroom. There are a lot of good ones in there to help you get started. And that's all from me. See you again next time. Goodbye.